What split-second decision changed your life? The moment I agreed to foster a baby for just one weekend ended up changing everything. It started when my corker Amy rushed into my office crying. Her sister had abandoned her 3-month-old at her doorstep with nothing but a dirty onesie and an empty bottle. Amy already had 4 kids and couldn't take another. Child Services said they'd pick the baby up Monday, but needed somewhere for her to stay over the weekend. I lived alone, had no experience with babies, and worked 60-hour weeks as an accountant. But something made me say yes. Maybe it was how tiny she looked, bundled in Amy's jacket. Maybe it was knowing she had nowhere else to go. That Friday night, I Googled how to take care of a baby while this tiny human, Penny, slept in a makeshift crib made from my laundry basket. I never felt more terrified or unqualified in my life. By Sunday, I'd somehow mastered one-handed diaper changes and could heat bottles to the perfect temperature. Penny had the sweetest laugh when I made silly faces. My heart broke knowing she'd be gone tomorrow. Then Monday morning, Child Services dropped a bomb. They'd found Penny's mother passed out in a motel with a needle in her arm. She'd be in rehab for at least 6 months. Would I consider being Penny's foster parent until then? I said yes before they finished asking. My boss let me work from home. My spare room became a nursery filled with second-hand baby gear. Penny learned to roll over, sit up, and crawl on my living room floor. 6 months turned into a year. Penny's mother completed rehab, but relapsed 2 weeks later. I started the adoption process, terrified someone would stop me. Then one rainy Tuesday, Penny's mother showed up at my door. My blood ran cold. She looked healthier, but her hands shook as she clutched a manila envelope. "I'm not here to take her," she said quickly. "I brought adoption papers. I've been clean 8 months now. Got a job and apartment. But I see how you look at her in the park." My heart stopped. She'd been watching us every Tuesday and Thursday. The way you hold her on the swings. How you know all her favorite songs. She lights up around you like she never did with me. I didn't know what to say. "I want to do better," she continued, "but not with her. She deserves the mother she already has." As if on cue, Penny toddled over, clutching her favorite purple hippo. "Mama, up," she demanded, reaching for me, her mother's eyes filled with tears. She knelt down and pulled something from her envelope, a small photo album. "This is her birth family's medical history and pictures when she's older and has questions. Could you give her this letter someday? I'll tell her I loved her enough to let her go." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. She turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. What's her favorite food? I've always wondered." "Butternut squash," I said softly, "but only if it's mixed with apples and cinnamon." She smiled sadly. "You really do know everything about her." The adoption was finalized 2 weeks later. Sometimes I still see her mother watching us at the park, always from a distance. She sends birthday cards, signed Angel Mom. I keep them in a box with that photo album, waiting for the day Penny's old enough to understand. Last week at daycare pickup, another mom asked if Penny got her curls from me. Without thinking, I said yes, because in every way that matters. In all the midnight feedings and first steps and butterfly kisses, she's completely, permanently mine. It was supposed to be just one weekend, one quick favor, one innocent, temporary act of kindness. But that split-second yes ended up changing everything. It all started on a cold Friday morning. I was knee-deep in tax audits, half a sandwich on my desk, when my coworker Amy burst into my office, crying. Her eyeliner streaked, her voice shaking. My sister left her baby, just dumped her on my doorstep. She whispered, voice raw. 3 months old, no diapers, no formula, just a dirty onesie and an empty bottle. Amy already had 4 kids of her own. 1 bathroom, no space. No sanity left to spare. Child services told her they'd pick the baby up on Monday, but until then, they needed somewhere safe, just for the weekend. "I don't know who else to ask," she said. I was 32, single, no kids. My entire life revolved around spreadsheets, not spit up. I worked 60-hour weeks and didn't even own a microwave, let alone baby gear. But something made me say yes. Maybe it was the way Amy held that tiny baby wrapped in her winter coat like a fragile bundle of glass. Maybe it was the look in that baby's eyes, wide, unsure, silently pleading for safety. Or maybe, just maybe, a part of me had been waiting for something. Someone to break the routine. Her name was Penny. She weighed just under 12 pounds. Her fingernails were dirty. Her cheeks were sunken, and yet she looked at me like, I was the whole world. That first night was chaos. I Googled everything. How to feed a baby, how to swaddle. Why won't babies stop crying? How many ounces is too much formula? She slept in a laundry basket lined with towels. I barely slept at all, but by Sunday, I could change a diaper one-handed. I'd learned how to hum lullabies while heating a bottle to exactly 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And Penny, she laughed when I made silly faces. Not just a giggle, a full-bellied, eye-sparkling laugh like she'd waited her whole life for someone to be silly just for her. And then Monday came. I dressed her in the cleanest onesie we had, kissed her soft little forehead, told myself not to get attached. But when child services knocked, they didn't come to take her away. Instead, they dropped a bomb. They'd found Penny's mother, passed out in a motel room, needles still in her arm. She was being checked into court-mandated rehab for at least 6 months. And then the question, would you consider being Penny's foster parent until her mother is back on her feet? I didn't even think. Yes, that same day, I asked my boss if I could work remotely. He hesitated, then nodded. "Do what you need to do," he said. Within a week, my guest room had become a nursery. Friends brought over used cribs, toys, a playmat with rainbows and clouds, my one silent apartment filled with lullabies, and the rustling sound of tiny feet kicking against the floor. Penny learned to roll over on my carpet. She took her first steps between my legs. She called me Mama before she could even say ball. 6 months passed, then a year. Penny's mom completed rehab but relapsed within 2 weeks. I filed for adoption, terrified at every step that someone would knock on my door and take her away. And then on a rainy Tuesday evening there was a knock. It was her, Penny's birth mom. Her clothes hung loose. Her hands trembled as she held out a manila envelope. I froze. "I'm not here to take her," she said quickly. "I brought these." Inside were signed adoption papers. "I've been clean 8 months, got a job, a place to stay. But I've been going to the park every Tuesday and Thursday," she said. I blinked, confused. "I saw how you look at her on the swings, how she looks at you, how you sing the silly songs when you think no one's watching. I want to do better," she whispered, "but not with her. She deserves the mother she already has." At that moment, Penny came toddling into the room, clutching her favorite purple hippo. Hand held up her arms. "Mama, up." Her birth mother covered her mouth, her eyes swimming. She knelt down and pulled something else from the envelope. A small, worn photo album. This is her birth family's medical history and pictures for when she's older and has questions. There's a letter, too. Tell her I loved her enough to let her go. I nodded, tears flowing freely. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "One more thing. What's her favorite food?" I've always wondered. "Butternut squash," I said, smiling through tears. but only if it's mixed with apples and cinnamon. She smiled, heartbroken but relieved. You really do know everything about her. The adoption was finalized 2 weeks later. Her birth mom didn't come to court, but she sent a card. It was signed, Angel Mom. Every birthday, Penny gets a card. From her, I keep them in a box beside the photo album, waiting for the day Penny's old enough to understand that love sometimes means letting go. Last week, during daycare pickup, another mom smiled at Penny and asked, "Where'd she get those curls? They're gorgeous." And without thinking, I said, "From me." Because in every way that matters, in every sleepy cuddle, every scraped knee, every whispered bedtime story, she's not just mine. She's completely, irrevocably, permanently mine. Story 2. At my dad's retirement venue, my sister said, "You can just drop off the gift." This night is about Dad. My mom whispered, "And please do not speak." I got a notification. $3,770 catering payment processed. I paused the card, pulled my authorization from the vendor, and declined final settlement. 2 hours later, my brother called. They shut it down. "There's no food," I replied. There was no space for me. Then I booked a "You can just drop off the gift." This night is about Dad. My sister Kendra said, brushing imaginary lint off her designer dress like I'd already overstayed my welcome. I was still standing in the lobby of the event hall, holding the carefully wrapped mahogany watch box I'd spent 2 weeks selecting and saving for. It wasn't cheap. Neither was the $3,770 catering bill I had just covered on my card that morning. Not that anyone had thanked me. "And please," my mom whispered, leaning in close with that tight, brittle smile she wore like a badge. "Don't speak. Let Kendra and the family handle the speeches." Right then, I knew this wasn't my family anymore. It was theirs. And I was just the guy they'd use to plug financial holes when the budget didn't stretch. My hand instinctively slipped into my pocket. A vibration, notification. $3,770 catering payment processed. I stared at the screen, then looked around. Rows of white linen tables, silver cutlery glinting under rented chandeliers, servers bustling around with shrimp platters, guests already sipping wine. Dad was on stage hugging Kendra like she was the only child he'd ever had. Me, I hadn't even been mentioned in the welcome remarks. So, I tapped the screen. Pause card. Revoke vendor authorization. Decline final settlement. Done. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed again. Unknown caller. It was my brother Noah, the only one who hadn't blocked me when I stopped paying for his car insurance. "Dude, they shut it down. There's no food. What did you do?" I took a slow sip of my iced coffee, already seated at a quiet diner across town. "There was no space for me," I said, so I made room somewhere else. I ended the call before he could respond. Then I ordered dessert. They say family is everything. That you do what you can because blood is thicker and all that. I used to believe that too, until I became a walking ATM with no voice. My dad, Mark Ellison, had worked 40 years as a high school principal, a tough guy. Never missed a day, always had something to say about discipline and duty. When he announced his retirement, the family went into full celebration mode. Venue bookings, speech drafts, catering quotes flying in. But there was one problem. No one had the money. Kendra, my older sister, the successful one in PR who never had less than a $500 haircut, had maxed out her cards. "I'm handling logistics," she said. "Money just isn't liquid right now." My brother Noah, he's the creative one. Graphic designer, gig economy legend who lives in a loft downtown and once crowdfunded rent because his MacBook needed better vibes. My mom, she hadn't worked since 1998. Her job now was keeping the peace, or more accurately, keeping everyone comfortable. Even if that meant I got buried. So, guess who covered everything? Venue, $2,400. Catering deposit, $1,500. Decor, $600 on custom signs and floral arrangements. Emotional labor, priceless. All paid by me. Jason, the youngest, the one who works with computers, which in their heads means I'm some rich hacker living in a tech castle. In reality, I manage enterprise cybersecurity projects. Good pay, but I'm not printing money. Still, when Dad made a joke about my golden goose, I laughed with them because that's what I do. I laughed through the part where Kendra said I'd handle the finances. I laughed when Mom texted me a Venmo request labeled miscellaneous joy items. I even laughed when Noah sent me a PDF invoice for the slideshow he made featuring himself in half the pictures. But it started to wear thin, especially when my name was omitted from the official invites. The invites I paid for. We just went with immediate family. Kendra said, I am immediate family. I said, you know what I mean? No, I didn't. The final straw wasn't even the money. It was rehearsal night. I showed up early to help set up the room. Kendra was barking orders. Noah was showing the bartender how to make his signature sangria. I carried in crates of champagne, sweating through, my button down, and no one spoke to me. Not Dad, not Mom, not even a nod. At one point, I overheard Kendra laughing with her friends near the stage. My brother, she said. Oh, he's around. Don't worry, he'll vanish before the pictures. He's allergic to attention. They all laughed. It wasn't a joke. I had vanished, or rather, they erased me. They loved what I gave, but not who I was. And then, a day before the event, I got the final invoice from the caterers. An unexpected $3,770 charged to my card without notice. When I texted Kendra about it, her response was just, oh yeah, we upgraded to the filet mignon. Hope that's cool. Cool? That's when I stopped being the good son. I called the caterer, revoked authorization, told them the charge was not approved. And then I booked a table for one at a rooftop brunch spot across the city, somewhere with real linen napkins and no passive-aggressive toasts. 2 hours into Dad's retirement party, I sat in the booth of a rooftop cafe, slowly sipping espresso and scrolling through the fallout. The event was collapsing in real time. No appetizers, no entree, no desserts, no shrimp towers or steak trays or little canapes with edible flowers. Just chaos. Text after text lit up my phone. Kendra, Jason, what did you do? Mom, the food is gone. Everyone is starving. Please fix this. Noah, they're freaking out. Man, people are leaving. Fix it now. But I didn't respond because for once they could stew in the mess they made. Apparently, the caterers had arrived, unloaded the first few trays, and then got a call from their payment processor. My authorization had been revoked. Since the final balance was unpaid and disputed, they were legally barred from completing. Service, policy, no exceptions. The servers packed up, the food left the venue, and 100 guests were left circling empty tables with champagne, but no sustenance. I didn't crash the event. I let it crash itself, but I did get a call from Dad. At first, I ignored it. Then it rang again and again and again. Finally, I picked up. Jason, he said, voice low, controlled, like he was trying not to yell in front of guests. What is going on? I could hear murmurs, clinking glasses, awkward music in the background. I pulled my authorization, I said evenly. I never agreed to pay that final balance. You all made decisions without me. He exhaled, sharp. So you're sabotaging your own father's retirement? I almost laughed. My own father, I repeated. That's rich? You mean the guy who didn't invite me to speak at his own event? The guy who let my sister treat me like a ghost? The guy who sat through Rehearsal dinner and didn't say a single word to me. "Jason," he hissed, "this isn't about you." I stood up from the cafe table and walked to the railing. The city buzzed beneath me, golden in the late sunlight. "It's never about me," I said quietly. "Not when I pay for Christmas flights. Not when I cover Noah's rent. Not when I fund your property tax bill every April like clockwork. I'm just a tool. A wallet with legs." "That's not fair," he snapped. "We've always known," I cut him off. "You've always taken and I always gave, even when it hurt." "But not today," he went silent. "Then people are leaving. It's humiliating. Can you at least come and explain?" I laughed. "You mean save you?" "Sorry, I already spent enough, saving everyone else. Maybe Kendra can fix it. Or Noah can design a flyer, explaining why there's no food." "Jason," he said again, lower this time, "your mother is upset." That stopped me for a second. But then I remembered her whispering, "Please don't speak. You should have thought about that before erasing me." I said, "Tell her to enjoy the night. It's about Dad, remember?" Then I hung up and blocked his number. 20 minutes later, the group chat exploded. Kendra sent a message with 7 exclamation points. "Oh, you recut off? I hope you're happy. You ruined everything." Then Noah chimed in. "We looked like fools. You didn't just skip it. You let it collapse." "Good." I didn't reply, but I did post a photo. One of me at the rooftop table holding a glass of white wine and smiling peacefully. The caption was simple. "Sometimes you have to remove yourself from the table when respect is no longer being served." I hit post and the comment section blew up. Old friends, former coworkers, even distant cousins all chimed in. "Needed this reminder. Good for you. Family doesn't mean sacrifice without appreciation." I was at that party. It was a disaster. You were right to walk away. By the time I paid my bill and left the restaurant, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Not with guilt, not with shame, but with validation. Because for the first time in years, I'd said no, and the sky didn't fall. They did, but it didn't end there. 2 days later, I got an email from the catering company's owner. Subject line regarding disputed payment. Ellison event. I braced for some legalese or threats. Instead, it read, "Jason, I just wanted to say thank you. I've been in this business 15 years. That was the first time someone had the guts to revoke payment after their family abused the contract behind their back. I overheard what your sister said about you during the planning phase. You didn't deserve that. Just letting you know. I refunded the deposit and flagged the account as ineligible for future bookings. We don't tolerate disrespect. Tomorrow, Eden Events." I stared at the screen, then smiled, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt free. You'd think after the retirement party imploded, they would finally reflect, maybe apologize, acknowledge. Me. Try to repair what they'd spent years breaking. They didn't. The next morning, my phone looked like it had survived a war. 17 missed calls, 5 from Mom, 7 from Kendra. 3 from Noah, 2 from Dad, and 1 particularly volcanic voicemail. "Jason, you humiliated us. Humiliated me. That was my legacy. Celebration and you disrupted your father's moment over some petty grudge. Don't come to the house. Don't call. You made your choice. This isn't your home anymore." That last line, "This isn't your home anymore." It didn't hurt the way he wanted. It too. What hurt was realizing it wasn't the first time they'd erased me. It was just the first time they said it out loud. I used to think if I just gave a little more, covered one more tuition payment, paid for one more emergency, agreed to one more favor, maybe they'd finally see me. I stopped thinking that. Instead, I saw a different truth. I wasn't family. I was finance, a source of money, not a person. So I made some changes, blocked the family group chat, canceled the auto payments, took a week off work, booked a trip, called a therapist, and for the first time in over a decade, slept 8 full hours. Without grinding my teeth then, Kendra showed up. 2 weeks after the party, she was waiting outside my office building like a debt collector. Designer trench, sunglasses, rage simmering just below the surface. "Jason," she barked. "We need to talk." I kept walking. She followed. "You destroyed everything. Dad won't even leave the house. Mom won't speak. You embarrassed all of us." I stopped, turned. "I didn't destroy anything," I said. "I just stopped paying for your illusion." She blinked. "You don't get it." She said, "We were a unit. We supported each other." "It took too much from me," I corrected. "There's a difference. You could have talked to us. Like you talked to me when you told me not to speak. When you told me to just drop off the gift, like a delivery boy." Her jaw tensed. "We didn't mean it like that." "No, I said you meant it exactly like that." She tried to guilt me. "Dad was going to include you in the trust, the house, his will." "I don't want his house," I said. "I paid more into that house than either of you ever did." "Then what do you want?" she snapped. I smiled. Silence. I turned and walked away, leaving her in the lobby like a ghost who couldn't haunt me anymore. But the real shock came a month later. An email from a law firm I didn't recognize. Subject: Mark Ellison Irrevocable Trust. Confidential notice. I stared at the screen. It wasn't spam. Attached, a legal document. My name, $781,000. Trust funded by proceeds from the family home. Sold before the party. Wait, he sold the house without telling anyone. I called the firm. Yes, the paralegal confirmed. Your father liquidated the property a month before his retirement. The funds were placed in a private irrevocable trust for you. Why me? She paused. There's a letter. He asked that we send it to you directly. I received it minutes later. Typed, signed, Jason, I know I was never fair to you. I let your siblings dominate the narrative. I let them speak for all of us. But I always noticed what you did quietly. You kept this family afloat. You never demanded recognition. You just gave. I don't deserve forgiveness. But maybe you deserve freedom. This trust is yours. Use it to live, not to rescue anyone else. You don't owe us anything. You never did, Dad. I stared at that letter for over an hour. Then I cried. Not for the money, but because he finally saw me. Maybe not when I needed it most, but at all. That night, I opened a bottle of wine alone in my apartment and toasted the first honest moment I'd ever received from him. It didn't make up for everything. But it was something. Kendra found out 2 weeks later. She emailed me pretending to be diplomatic. Hi Jason, hope you're well. I was surprised to learn about the trust. I think Dad may have been confused with the legal distribution structure. Let's meet and discuss a fair way to redistribute. I replied with a single sentence. The money isn't confusing. Only your entitlement is blocked. Noah called too from a blocked number. I just wanted to say, he began. I left Mom's house. I've been staying with a friend. After everything, I get it now, and I'm sorry. I stayed silent. You were right, he said about all of it. I let him finish. Then replied, I accept your apology, but I don't owe you access to me. And that was it. 3 days later, I booked a flight to Barcelona. Stayed a month while walking the Gothic quarter at dusk. Watching strangers play guitar under glowing street lamps, I realized something. For years, I thought I had to earn my place in my family. Now I knew I had to unlearn them. They weren't. Home, they were a habit, and I was done. 6 months after the retirement party, I barely recognized my own life. Not because I was someone else, but because I'd finally stepped into who I had always been. Beneath the guilt, the obligation, the endless phone calls, and quiet resentment, why days became simpler, lighter. My mornings began without dread. No texts demanding help, no passive-aggressive voicemails. No crisis dumped on my lap with a cheery, "You're the responsible one, right?" I drank my coffee hot. I sat in silence. I breathed. And for the first time in years, I felt like my life was mine. The trust Dad left me gave me financial peace. But more than that, his letter gave me permission. The one thing I'd been silently begging for since I was a kid. Permission to stop proving myself. Permission to stop bleeding for people who only noticed when the bleeding stopped. But that didn't mean everything was healed. There were moments I'd pick up my phone half expecting to see a message from Mom or Noah. I didn't miss the manipulation. But I did miss what I wished our relationships could have been. Sometimes I even found myself composing texts I'd never send. I wish things were different. You hurt me more than I ever let on, but I'm still glad I walked away. Instead, I saved those thoughts in a private journal. Pages filled with quiet truths. Pages no one else would ever see. Because I wasn't writing to be heard anymore. I was writing to understand myself. One day while decluttering, I came across a box filled with old birthday cards, dozens of them, all from the past 10 years, almost all of them from me to them. Each card had a check inside, a generous message, a line about being here if you need me. There wasn't a single one from them to me. That's when I laughed. Not bitterly, but with clarity. I finally saw the pattern I'd been trapped in. I was always the giver. They were always the takers. And the moment I stopped giving, I became the villain. That was never love. That was dependency dressed up in family photos. And walking away, it didn't make me cruel. It made me whole. Later that week, I took Juniper, the rescue dog I'd adopted after the party, on a hike. She chased butterflies, barked at pine cones, and looked back at me every few minutes, just to make sure I was still there. She trusted me. Not for what I gave her, but because I showed up consistently, quietly, fully, and I realized that's what I always wanted. Not applause, not money, not even forgiveness, just someone who saw me and stayed. That same night, as I was making dinner, my phone buzzed. A name I hadn't seen in months. Noah. He didn't ask for money. He just sent a picture of a tiny apartment with the caption, "Not much, but I paid for it myself." I stared at it for a long time, then wrote back, "Good. That's how it should be." No more, no less. I didn't unblock Mom. I didn't respond to Kendra's 10th apology letter, especially not the one with a veiled threat about what Dad would have wanted, because I knew what Dad wanted. He told me himself. He wanted me free, and I was. A few months later, I used part of the trust to start something small but meaningful. A foundation offering emergency grants to low-income young adults. People who, like me, had been holding their families together with invisible threads. I named it the Anchor Font because that's what I'd been for too long. Now I was the lighthouse, and maybe one day someone else drowning in guilt and obligation will find their way to shore because I lit the path. That's the legacy I want. Not a toast at a banquet I was told not to speak at. It's not a plaque from a family that once erased me. Just this quiet peace, real boundaries, and a life I built for myself by myself without apology. The story didn't end when I walked away. Stories like these never really end. They shift. They quiet down. They reappear in unexpected ways. But most importantly, they change shape the moment you decide to stop playing your assigned role. 6 months after I started the Anchor Fund, I got a letter in the mail, real paper, handwritten from Mom. Jason. I still don't understand why you did what you did. I know you think we mistreated you, but it never felt that way to us. You were the strong one. We leaned on you because we trusted you. I miss you. Love, Mom." I stared at that "miss you" for a while. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't accountability. But maybe for her, it was progress. Still, I didn't respond because by then, I knew something important. Closure doesn't always come wrapped in mutual understanding. Sometimes it comes when you realize you no longer need it. Kendra, she tried rebranding. New job, new image. She posted an inspirational LinkedIn article about boundaries and burnout. The irony was laughable. Then she sent me a DM. "I've grown. I'm not the same person I was. I hope one day you can see that." I left it on scene because growth that demands recognition from the person you hurt isn't growth. It's PR. Noah, though he stayed in touch slowly, respectfully, he never asked for money again. He told me he started therapy. One day, he messaged, "I found Dad's letter to you in Mom's drawer. I read it. I cried. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you." That one I replied to, "It's okay. I didn't stand up for me either." Not until it was too late. "I'm glad you're learning." He asked if we could get lunch sometime. I told him not yet, but maybe. And for the first time, maybe didn't feel like a delay. It felt like a door I'd choose when I was ready. As for Dad, he passed away 10 months after the party. Heart failure, no drama, no fanfare, just a quiet ending to a loud man. I didn't attend the funeral, not out of spite, but because he and I already had our final conversation. In that letter, that trust was his apology. That money was his confession, and his silence at the end was him finally stepping back so I could breathe. The Anchor Fund grew. I met people who reminded me of who I was 10 years ago. Overworked, underappreciated, buried under family expectations. I helped them pay for classes, leave toxic homes, take therapy. Every time someone said I didn't think anyone saw me, I'd nod because I knew exactly what that felt like. And now, I had built something that didn't just heal me. It multiplied that healing. 1 year after the party, on the exact date, I booked a table for one. Same restaurant where Dad's retirement party was supposed to happen. I ordered the meal,